Hello, audience. Welcome to the Master Your Money Show, how to build your entrepreneurial and financial mindset to make more money and accelerate your business. And today we've got some really special guests. We've got Anfernee Chansamooth and Cindy Pham, who are here as a special guest because they're actually doing this interview together. They're the only people who've come on the show as a couple, and they've got a really beneficial topic we're going to dive in today. So we're going to be looking specifically around what to do with money and business when you're working as a couple, when you're working with your partner or in a marriage, and how to really make the most of that and get things set up so that you can have a smooth ride there. So look, guys, I just want to thank you for joining us on the show.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And audience members, so a bit about Anfernee and Cindy. So they're a husband and wife team, and their focus is helping married entrepreneurs to launch, grow, and optimize their remote work business. So not only are they doing things together, but they really have this focus on people who want to live and work remotely, travel the world, really experience life from that side of things, which I know is for a lot of entrepreneurs, we really like to have that freedom, that lifestyle flexibility. So please, guys, tell us some more about that and how you got into that. And I know you've got a podcast as well. So tell us how that's all come about.
All right. So we'll go back to when we met. I think that's probably good place to start.
At the beginning.
So I was working actually in a full-time job right at the time, and that's after I had a failed business before that. Came back to the workforce. I actually had gone and volunteered overseas for about 18 months in Laos, and then I came back to Australia. Was working as a marketing manager in one of Australia's largest co-working spaces. Did that for a couple of years. I met Cindy whilst I was still in that role, and was sort of nearing the end of that time. And something that Cindy observed, being my partner, so the girlfriend at the time, was just how much stress I was going through in that role and wearing three hats, and not getting paid what I should have been paid and all these other things. Mm-hmm. And so it was actually with Cindy's encouragement that I actually leave the company, and then I actually pursued my second business, which is now Simple Creative Marketing. And I took my writing skills and all the things I was doing within that role, and then turned that into a consulting and a freelancing gig, if you want to call it that. And then went through the journey of the next 18 months building this business. And at its peak, we had 5 writers, contracted writers. We had 2 editors. We had Cindy on board helping me with the accounts and other things. And I was not bringing home a salary, right? So almost 2 years with making money in the business, but not having the personal income go up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that became a real struggle. And Cindy can share her perspective, what that meant for you, being, I proposed to Cindy halfway through that journey. We get married, I'm being the lucky guy with this beautiful woman saying, yes, I'll marry you. And then I went, crap, how am I going to afford the wedding? And so these were the kind of things that were going on at the time. And so what was going through your mind?
Yeah, what did I get myself into, isn't it? Basically I got to know him a lot more, and a lot more about his financial situation as well.
Yeah. And
we both kind of knew who was the better money manager.
Yeah.
So basically after that I just took over, and we found a system that worked for us. And we got to do what we wanted to do, nomading after we got married.
Yeah, so we traveled for 18 months after our wedding. We just went, we both love travel as, individually, and said, okay, well, let's do this together. And pretty much not too long after the wedding, we just booked our flight and one-way ticket to, where do we start off with? Penang in Malaysia. And then look back for the next 18 months. I did a bit of a pivot with my business. So we had a team doing outsourced content writing and articles for small businesses. And then the opportunity, or what came from that, was a realization that all my clients needed help, not just with their content, but with their marketing strategies. Didn't know what to do with the content. We gave them content, but then they kind of struggled with, okay, what do we do this?
What to do with it? Yeah.
So it's like, so then I, on advice from one of my mentors as well at the time, and he basically said, well, why don't you offer some kind of like a virtual marketing officer type role, where you basically, become the marketing manager, outsourced marketing manager for these companies. And that's whilst we were doing the nomad thing, traveling every month or two, would be in a new location around somewhere around the world. And so that was the journey. And then towards the end of those 18 months, we had a realization that a lot of movement isn't great for building a business, especially when your clients are or most of my clients are based in Australia. I had one in the US.
Yeah.
And so the feedback from the clients was, just the fact that you guys are moving so much, and, you're missing meetings because you're like racing to the airport and all these things are happening.
Yeah.
It's just not good business. And we're also at the point where we kind of want stability, because we've just been married, and it's like we need to have our own space and, be grounded and get into some kind of rhythm and routine. So that was that. All of that combined gave the birth to what is now Founders Connect. We started with a podcast and sharing our journey as a married couple, getting into the finances of it. How does that work? The decision-making points, the struggles, the learnings, and then also in the relationship. So that's the money side. Then we looked at the business side. What does it take?
The headaches.
Yes, all the stress.
Yeah.
And the wife of the entrepreneur, and then she becomes an entrepreneur herself. And then it's like, then there's the relationship part of it. How do you stay motivated as a couple, stay connected, not let work kill the romance, and all those things come up as well. So that's what became Founders Connect. We launched with a podcast last August when we were still in Montreal, and then we started interviewing other couples who were going through that journey, as well as relationship experts, therapists, psychologists, people who could actually give real experience around what it takes to build successful relationships, in addition to successful businesses. So that's where we are today.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite a journey in there. I'd like to maybe dive into some of the kind of timeline of events there as well. So you went from, originally you weren't taking a salary from the business. Had that kind of picked up and changed by the time you guys got married and you had that more flexibility?
It kind of changed. Yeah, I'm just going back timeline. So we got married in April. It was probably around November when we started to implement, you might be familiar, or the audience might be familiar with Profit First.
Yeah.
So that we put into the business, and then that's working for the business. It took a few months to actually get that working, and then and that's when I, literally after doing 4 years of business, my own business journey, having never paid myself, finally got to a point where it's like, wow, I'm actually putting a salary here, and that's became a priority, so that we could afford a lifestyle, right? So we could do the things we wanted to do, and then Cindy also helped implement a personal finance strategy. So it's all around, okay, well, how do we save for our goals? How do we want to have kids? How are we going to afford that? Or whatever it is that we want to do, we needed to have strategies in both realms, if you will, and that's what we did.
Yeah, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, so I just said, you've got to have that balance.
Yeah.
Also the business.
And what did you guys do to find that balance? What's some of the journeys there, or the kind of strategies you put in place?
Yeah. So the first one really was just understanding, and this came probably accidentally, not so much intentionally, but in one conversation when I think when we were engaged or something, the conversation around money came up, and that story, and how you learned about my great financial habits.
Oh, geez, yeah. He just bung it on me. Oh, darling, I have a debt. And I'm like, what? Why did you tell me earlier? I would have just gone.
and we're talking significant debt, I from just personal loans I'd taken in the past, and else, and and that's something that we hadn't really spoken about until that point. And it was kind of hey, here's, by the way, I have, whatever, it's like $40,000 in debt or something like that, and just was shocked. and,
To my system.
and that's the thing, when you enter a relationship with someone, and you don't have the money conversations, then you're not only bringing in the great things about them, but you're also bringing in the patterns of behaviors that they have adopted over their life, and their families and whatever else. So I learned my money habits obviously from my parents. They weren't the best savers. They weren't investors. They grew up in rural Laos, which is a poor, relatively speaking, a poor place to grow up. They're in a village, and it wasn't until they immigrated to Australia and started making money through their jobs, like they were making much more money than their entire family had ever seen, like in going back generations. But they didn't know what to do with it. And my dad was, he was a soldier during the Vietnam War, and so he had come across with PSTD and whatever else, and didn't know how to. This is actually, I researched this like fairly recently, but it's actually quite common for those who have immigrated from wartime or war zones. They move to these countries to create a better life for themselves and their families, but they bring with them poor financial habits because they don't know, that money becomes a crux for dealing with all the emotional trauma that they've had in their lives. And so they end up gambling it away, and they end up doing really bad things. Not bad, but just not smart things with the money.
Money habits.
Yeah. So it's pretty common in the research that I've explored, and so you had to deal with that. So for her, she grew up with a different mentality. So you want to share?
So you can guess, right? Who's the better money habit person? So basically, I don't even have debt to now, really. My only debt is the debt that I actually can't pay, and that has been throughout my whole life. So I'm pretty lucky in that case that I actually control that. My habits and his habits like opposites. So we basically talked it out and made a plans and also allocate certain things. Have some limits and joint decisions on big amounts.
So sort of unpack that, and we share this in the guide that we wrote on financial intimacy as a couple. It's first unpacking and understanding what each individual, what their money patterns are and what their money beliefs are. Do those match, right? So and if they don't, coming up with real strategies to actually get on the same page, right? And a good way for us was to actually work out, well, what are our goals together? Okay, as a couple, we're married now. What do we want to be doing over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, right? And then by reverse engineering those goals, we can work out, well, how much income do we need? How much savings do we need? If we're going to be investing, in property or whatever it may be, what does that look like, right? So just doing the work, and you got to remember, up until this point, I'd never done any of this. Like I've done it for marketing metrics and these sort of things, but applied it to my finances. And Cindy has a finance background, so she actually worked as a corporate in corporate finance.
Yeah, I have.
So she brought that into our relationship and transformed it for us.
Well,
that's spender or a saver?
What was that? Sorry.
Are you a spender or a saver?
I'm from the saving side of things, but I do have to be really conscious about my spending, because I found, particularly in business, it's easy to get caught up chasing like the shiny new object and that syndrome as well. And I'm also a musician, so not so much now. I kind of got things down pat, but in my 20s, before I had any kind of experience or training, education around money, I would just be spending it all on that, and that was my kind of tunnel vision focus there as well.
There you go.
And it's interesting because like you're explaining, it comes from like our experiences growing up. So, like Anfernee, was there a time when is there a specific money memory you can have of your parents when you realized, okay, my parents, aren't really on top of things financially?
Well, my mother passed away in 2009 with a liver cancer, and
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. And naturally, because of the passing, we have to talk about the finances. So, there was one point when someone came knocking in our door. Like I was in Sydney at the time with my dad, and someone basically just came knocking, asking for a bunch of money that my mother had borrowed from them, and was, and they wanted it back, right? So we started to look into financials to understand, okay, what's actually going on. Essentially, Mum passed away with like $50,000 in debt, and then that was sort of one example. And we didn't know about this. Dad had no clue, like that wasn't even there. And then another incident happened where the superannuation that came from that Mum had, for her career, had built up this superannuation savings, and that was being paid out back to our family. And I basically said to Dad, like I don't need to. I don't need the money because I've got a job and everything's good in that sense. And then whatever my portion is, just because Mum had put in her will that she wanted it to be split between myself and my dad. I said, I want you to have a good life. I want you to take care of yourself, and you take money. And so, and I was thinking he might go and, investment or something like that. I don't know, but that was my assumption, and I was totally wrong. And so he just made some really bad decisions around what to do with that money. Now I was in a situation where basically it hasn't, it just didn't go the way that I thought it would have gone. And then I realized, okay, they didn't have financial literacy. They didn't have they didn't work with personal financial planners or anyone who could actually guide them. That's something, looking at our relationship, we want it to be that for other people as well, because we've learned from that, and we're saying, well, look, it's easy, like when you're just building a business, it's easy to look at all the things you need to do in the business as the entrepreneur, and there's a lot of advice around how to get funding and how to grow your business, all these sort of things. But there's not so much advice on what do you do with making sure your personal finances are in order. And that becomes a real struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs, because they could be making millions of dollars in the business, but if they're not handling their personal finances, that ends up affecting the business, because you start buying things you shouldn't be buying.
Of course, yeah.
Taking loans out of the business that you can never pay it back, and all sort of things like that. So yeah, that's essentially. I don't know if I answered the question, Josh, but that's
Well, no, I just want to thank you for sharing that, because that's it's obviously that's affected your whole family, that financial literacy there as well. I mean, through that, was that a change, or did it get you thinking down the track there? Like Cindy, did you come after that? Did you guys meet a little bit after that? How did that kind of pan out?
Well, yeah, I met him after that. My childhood was quite different. I saw my mum as the actual entrepreneur and the money saver, while my dad was just basically, if he has money, he will spend it all. But that's about it. I don't know if he has any debt or anything, but I knew which way I wanted to go, so I just followed my mum's way of going. As saving the money and doing for the people, basically.
Yeah. Did that lead into your career into?
No, actually, I didn't even know what I wanted to do, but a friend of mine enrolled me in accounting, and I've always been an accountant since. And I was pretty lucky to be in the top 4 accountants. They taught me a different kind of financial and also personal growth, and traits that I need to be in a certain environment, in a big corporate environment. So I was pretty lucky. Oh, well, I'm always lucky.
That's great. And did you? What was that?
He said, "Well, she's always lucky, so I'm just sort of borrowing that luck from her."
Yeah, you're hitched together now. You get to take it as well.
Right. But you asked the question about, is there an early memory sort of involved with money and in my family, and I definitely have one. But my earliest memory is actually being 4 years old with a bunch of family friends and 3 other kids, and we were basically doing what kids do. We had snuck a bottle of beer from the parents and the oldies, and we were, I don't know if we were drinking it, but we were kind of observing it underneath the table. But what was happening in the background was more interesting in the context of this relationship, into this conversation. The parents were actually gambling. Okay, so my first memory of money was actually my parents gambling the money away.
Wow.
Because that was a pastime for them. Every weekend they'd get together, whatever earnings they made from their jobs, they would obviously pay the groceries and make sure those things were taken care of. But whatever they had left or spare, they would just sit together and play card games and whatever it was, and cash was always involved. So, it wasn't until I worked with a money coach, such as yourself, that I realized, hey, like that's actually, like, imagine being 4 years old and the first thing you get input into your brain is whenever you make money, you go and gamble it away.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yes.
So I obviously had to work through that. And Cindy's been great reminding me, just, hey, pay attention to your expenses and what you're spending your money on, and set limits. Like, you can have your discretionary fund. Like I get like $20 to spend on my coffees. That's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, I mean, we've heard Cindy, you've been a mentor to Anfernee there around money and business too, because as you said before, Anfernee, like, the personal spending, the way you do that, affects your business as well. Was there any particular mentors that you guys have both had along the way that affected how you run businesses and entrepreneurship as well as the finance side?
You have?
Oh, I think, the biggest one for me is T. Harv Eker. I went to his seminar.
Okay.
And that concept of mindset is so important, because before I would go to so many seminars and, it would motivate me for a bit to do this and this and this, and then it would just die. And with the concept of what T. Harv Eker taught me, that just changes my mindset on everything, basically, especially with the 6 Jars money management system that he introduced. And that's a really smart way of doing it. You can actually do it visually, or you can do it now with the technology. You can do it in your bank account and split it up and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was my real mentor there in that sense.
Are you familiar with the 6 Jars?
I read his book earlier this year, actually, but from memory, 6 Jars is you're allocating your you're being intentional with how you're spending your money with things there. But is that a system you guys are using yourself now?
Absolutely. So it's it basically comes from going back a few generations. Our grandparents and whatever else were like, even my grandparents used to do that when they had their check or whatever it was, or their cash paid out from their job. They would bring it home in an envelope, and then they might split it up into smaller envelopes, and here's some money that goes in. A percentage would go in for groceries, another percentage would be for a rainy day, right? Whatever it may be. And so T. Harv kind of just basically visualized that and said, well, he recommended 6 different jars. One was for your necessities, one was for your long-term savings, another one was for play or recreation, entertainment, another one for education, so for your own self-learning and growth, another one is for financial freedom or investment, and then the 6th one is for contribution and giving. So, and that's kind of what we set up within our own banking system, bank account, for finances. So when I pull it, my salary comes out of the business account and goes into the personal account, then that's then split into those 6.
Split out.
And in the business side, so like I mentioned earlier, a mentor for me has been Mike Lowitz and his Profit First system. Making sure you do get you're separating profit from salary, like as an income, also separating your expenses. But the key mental shift for us has been that is profit first. So it's not what we normally do, which is, you know, the traditional accounting equation of subtracting your expenses first. It's actually you subtract your profit first, and then you have to get creative with your expenses or start cutting your expenses.
Yeah.
That's changed the way it works for us.
Yeah, I like both of those systems, and but the profit first is what I use myself, and then personal finances having that similar system too, where those key areas, particularly business, you allocate that profit out first. And same with personal finances as well. When you have your goals going out first, you get creative, or you cut back, or it's easier to make that decision about the stuff that is not going to really give you long-term lifestyle and things like that. So I love it. That's both great.
It's hilarious because, you know, there's all this commentary on, and I know SMH had published a piece about, you know, the smashed Avo and the younger generations, they're getting, you know, these lifestyle benefits, and it's like, and then there's people out there like Ramit Sethi, who's another one of my mentors. He what's his blog? I can help you.
I will teach you to be rich.
Yeah, exactly. And he's talking about, it's not about the smashed avocados and coffees. Like it's you actually have to have, you know, no matter how much money you save on your coffees over your lifetime, that's not going to equate to your income potential. And if you're not earning, you know, finding ways to generate more income and investment, then that's going to be a huge problem. Another a great mentor in my life, certainly in my business, has been Meryl Johnson. I know you're interviewing her from Be Ninjas, and she runs an online bookkeeping service.
Yeah.
So I'm basically I'm the marketing manager for her company, and we have been really focusing down on what financial freedom means, and specifically for entrepreneurs, because a lot of them, like us, we want financial freedom, but we also want the lifestyle that comes with that. So it's more about being able to choose where you work and how you work and when you work, and, you know, if you're having kids, to be home for the kids and not be stuck in the office, and those sort of things. And for us, our sort of parents are getting older, so we want to spend more time with them, and we've got our nieces and nephews as well. So, you know, there's all these like people that we love and we cherish and we want to be around, and it's also like part of travel for us is more about exploring new cultures and new experiences, and like when we were in Bali last year, we had because Cindy had the best moments of her life. I took her to the Green School, which is, if you've never heard of it, I recommend you YouTube it and then look up Green School. It's the model of the future of education.
Oh, wow.
Kids are learning like very different to what we went through. Now
the curriculum is very different, and the way they set the environment is just like unlimited, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and
no barriers, kind of thing. Very open.
Yeah, it's basically an open education philosophy, and right down to the way they construct the buildings. It's made of bamboo, and it's beautifully designed architecture, and none of the rooms have walls. So basically, the theory is that it's a completely connected ecosystem. So and that's how we as humans survive and thrive. Without going too much into the Green School, but that's the whole point of all of this is, being able to be smart with our finances, grow the businesses, build our teams, and then also live the kind of lifestyle that we want to live.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And obviously that's taking that step back and really deciding what it is you want, and then everything that's the flow from that. Would that be correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And just a tip for anyone who wants to get into remote work and digital nomadism and all that kind of stuff, you need to adopt minimalism, and that's something that Cindy has had to learn.
Hey, I thought you were the spender.
I want clothes, I'm a girl. My clothes, my accessories,
But yeah, there's also I actually did like 30 days of minimalism to start the whole thing. This is before I met Cindy, and that was more about just understanding that we can get very caught up in the material sort of things in our world. The cars, and the houses, and all the clothes and everything else. And when you start to really look at what is meaningful for you, most people would actually say it's not those things. It's the people in their life, experiences, those moments they remember, being there for their child being born, or whatever it may be. That's our choice. It's experiences over things, right? And that's been critical in terms of our finances too, because actually we save a lot of money because we're not buying all those things anymore. So that's been.
It's so hard for me, trust me. It's so hard. It's a lot of discipline. So you have to have a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
Gosh, how did you start your money conversation? I'm curious.
Well, look, like particularly when it's a couple, I guess, and I've been in the situation. I know other people have that situation that sometimes, it's particularly if you don't know that money conversation background or where people are at in terms of debt or things like that. It's kind of starting from a place where it's a bit more casual, not kind of like going in all guns blazing. Which, like, I mean, you guys have shared that story, how you had to explain your situation, Anfernee, too. As you guys would know, like you have to communicate and you have to be willing to listen and hear both sides of you too. And that actually leads me to my last question, because I'd really love to know what's the number one thing for you guys that has helped you both in terms of your relationship and your marriage in discussing finance and business as well.
I think for me, most importantly, is those honest, difficult conversations. If you're able to go through that and bring that up, without any kind of with a thought of love or thought of something better.
In a similar fashion, one of the so in the gift that we're giving with this event, one of the worksheets in there is about setting or defining your rules of engagement. And what we mean by that is, before you jump into having difficult conversations and maybe shouting matches and whatever it may be, really understanding that you are on the same page and you're working as a team. Start from that grounding and that basis, and you go, well, how, and then having to adopt that. So for me, I have to look at, well, how am I presenting myself here? What am I saying? And is it coming from that perspective of like really supporting the team, or is it really about just me? And I've like screwed up. There have been moments where it hasn't come out that way, but it's also, we also then have forgiveness, and it's like, but that's part of the rules, right? It's like, let's not call each other names. Understand that we do have different backgrounds, and really this is an opportunity for us to grow together, and to grow as individuals as well. And so we also do a lot of work individually. Yes. We have a monthly me day where we just go out on our own, and I might just go to the beach or cafe or something, and then I'm looking at what are my personal goals and how am I tracking, as a CEO and also as a husband.
That's that day.
Yeah. And then we come back together and we share those things. And say,
great.
And how does this tie to, and with the finances, we have a monthly sort of revisit of our financial goals and looking at how we're tracking with the money as well. Because when we weren't doing money dates, you can't just assume the other person knows what's going on and what you're doing with how you're spending things, right? You don't want to sort of wait until you get that end of year bill and it hits them and they go, what the hell just happened? It's better for us to be more transparent about that. Even when it comes to making decisions, it's always like, hey, honey, is this a good business decision? Should I be investing in here or not? And so that's some practices that we've implemented.
But on that, you need to not ask all the time. So I kind of like give them a ceiling amount. Under that, you can, make your own decisions. And after that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it might sound, for some people, it's like, oh, what? Like, your wife's putting limits on how much you spend. It's not that. I'm actually asking for it because it actually helps me. And there is a agreed amount where it's like, underneath, $100, whatever it is, you can spend on whatever you want. You don't need to get approvals for that, right? But if you get to the thousands, now that's going to be an impact, and we need to look at, okay, is that the best choice right now?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing just your own situation there. And Yeah, look, audience members, Anfernee and Cindy have put together a guide called The Art of Financial Intimacy, how to manage your money as an entrepreneur couple. So definitely, I know that they've put heaps of strategies in there. There's a workbook attached to it. Anything else the audience needs to know about that, guys?
No, I think there's a lot there. It covers. So one thing that I kind of start that piece off, the guide off with is, for a lot of couples, they focus on the sexual intimacy side of things and how do you get the flames happening there. And like in our experience and with people who we've spoken to, the best way to do that is actually to sort out your financial intimacy, because what it does is forces you to be open and transparent with each other and honest.
Yeah.
That actually, believe it or not, actually ignites the bedroom. So that guide, because that's what we talk about in there as well.
Yeah. Look, if that's not a good enough reason to check it out for anyone listening, I don't know what is. So that's fantastic. Look, guys, I just want to thank you for being on the show. What you're doing is really unique and just so applicable to most people as well. I know there's just a wealth of knowledge there too for people who are working remotely or entrepreneurs just looking to start out or really get traction with things there as well. So definitely get a hold of that guide. We'll put the link in the show notes. Definitely check out foundersconnect.co as well. I know there's a podcast there. I know your website's got heaps of other resources in there too. So look, Anfernee, Cindy, I just want to thank you for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure to speak to you and really hear your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Josh. We really appreciate you inviting us on to have a chat with you today.
Yes, thank you for that.
And thanks everyone Cheers.
Thanks. Audience members, make sure you stay tuned as well. We've got more episodes coming out of the Master Your Money show. There's plenty more areas of finance, business, entrepreneurship we're going to be diving into. So stay tuned. And thank you again, guys. Have a great day.
You too.